Politicians claim crime stats are down, but for patrol officers working the streets, the job is as dangerous as ever. Over the past 10 years, there has been little fluctuation in the number of officers assaulted or killed on duty. The unchanging fact is, whenever we bury an officer, he is lost to us forever. Ultimate Officer Survival teaches law and security personnel how to significantly increase the odds for survival on a daily basis. Most departments are deficient in teaching realistic and workable survival skills to their officers. All tactics used in this video are field proven to be fast, effective, and usable by officers in full uniform. 13% of all lawmen killed on the job are shot with their own guns. If you're going to carry a weapon, you need to know how to keep it from being used against you. Using this video, you'll learn the best tactics to retain handguns in and out of the holster. We'll show you why some commonly taught methods can get you killed in a real struggle. With the popularity of carbines, AR-15s, and shotguns in police arsenals, officers also need to know how to retain long guns. Proper long gun retention tactics and common mistakes are studied in detail. When you need cuffs on a suspect, you need them on quickly and securely. You'll be able to perfect your handcuffing skills using this video. Takedowns are important. 75% of violent encounters end up on the ground. You need the advantage of being able to take the resistor down first so you can subdue and control him. CQB Incorporated founder Chuck Habermill has 18 years in law enforcement as a deputy chief of police, firearms instructor, tactical trainer, and SWAT team commander. He has spent nearly 30 years teaching combative courses to military and police personnel.
I'm closing in on close to 30 years of experience in instructing in the areas of defensive tactics and officer survival. And what I've tried to do in this 3-tape series so far is to take areas of concern that I see that are very deficient in police training across the country. We don't know how to retain our weapon. We don't know how to handcuff. We don't know how to get somebody down to the ground. If it goes to the ground, we don't know what to do. All these areas, whether they're in police academy settings or they're in-service settings, this type of training is not being taught. And so we're trying to fill that void because these are the things that officers run into out there in the street, but yet they're not being taught in the institutions like they should be. What you'll see in this video, as well as the other videos that we've put out, is that this video I'll show techniques in my training gear just so the officer can see how the technique is perfected, and then we'll suit up a couple officers in full gear and see what limitations, if any, and there will be some, that the officer encounters when he attempts these certain skills. And the important thing there is then you see what the skill is capable of doing with gear on, and make a modification either in your equipment or a modification in the technique. And if a modification in the technique doesn't work, or modifying the equipment doesn't work, then we may eliminate that technique. That's why we show so many techniques, so that if that one doesn't work, you can go to another one and you're not left without something.
Okay, the first thing we're going to cover in this video is falling. How is the correct way for you to fall? It's important that if we're going to do takedowns as part of our training, that we learn how to fall properly, not only for our training purposes, but also for the purposes of working out there on the street, so that when we hit the ground, we let the large muscle groups of our body absorb and take all the energy and the punishment, which allows us to keep from breaking our hands and our wrists and our arms, so that we can still function as police officers. Daniel, come in if you'll give me a hand for a second. First falling technique we're going to go over is the rear fall. Here again in the rear fall, the way we might end up in this position is that somebody pushes you from the front, you lose your balance, you go down on the ground. Perhaps you trip as you're moving back away from something and you happen to fall down on the ground. We want to prevent several things from happening in this rear fall. The biggest problem is that when he goes down on the ground and he goes hard, his head has a tendency to bounce off the floor. So if that's out there on the street or on the asphalt or pavement, then he may not ever get up again. So we want to prevent that. When Daniel falls, he'll always keep his chin tucked into his chest. Whether it's a rear fall, left or right side fall, which we'll do here in a second, that's preventing his head from making this basketball action off the floor. We don't want that to happen. Another thing that he'll do in this rear fall is he'll let the large muscle groups of his back, his lat muscles here, absorb all the energy. There again, we're trying to displace all this energy that when we strike the floor, we have all this energy. It has to go somewhere. It can go into your wrist, which is the wrong way to fall. Daniel, reach back, stop yourself from falling. That's how most people will try to protect themselves if they fall to the rear. What's going to happen is all this energy in Daniel's body, his body weight, 170 pounds, 180, 220, whatever you weigh, is still coming. You have velocity associated with it. Your arms lock here. Your wrists are not going to be able to prevent this velocity and all this power from going back, and you're going to sprain or break your wrist, or you're going to injure your elbow or your shoulder. Now you get up, it escalates to a shooting situation, or the fight continues. You're going to have a hard time fighting when you've got one of your limbs that's not functioning properly. So how do we prevent that? We let the large muscle groups of his back absorb most of the energy. As he comes down, he tucks his chin, he slaps the floor at the same time, keeping his arms at a 45-degree angle. So now we're displacing all this energy through his lat muscles, his forearms, all the way through his fingertips. Can't hurt his head because he's keeping his chin tucked into his chest. We don't want to reach out wide like this. This is another mistake in falling. What happens here, it elevates his shoulders now, puts a lot of torque and pressure on his shoulders. So good here again, a good way to get a rotator cuff injury or to pull a muscle here in the deltoid region or something like that. So we keep it 45 degrees. This is a perfect fall right here. I start all the falling done from a sitting position. And when he falls, he'll do all those principles, keeping everything in mind. When he falls back, fall. And that's what we're doing right there. Simple falling technique. Once he masters that, I put the student, I like students to go to a kneeling position. What we're trying to achieve by these different positions now, this is still a rear fall, is each time he moves, now he's got a little bit more velocity and force associated with his fall than he did just a second ago when he's sitting down. So now he'll fall again. I like him to start and fall straight back. Same thing, chin tucked into his chest, large muscle groups of the lats, as well as displacing energy out his forearms through his fingertips. Okay? Well, another principle we want to have here too on all these falls, we want to make sure that he's exhaling when he falls. What we're doing is you think of your lungs as a paper bag. Blow that paper bag up. When you hit the floor, if you don't exhale, all that air's got to go somewhere, and now you're going to be out of breath, and your priority then won't be defending yourself, it's going to be breathing. So to prevent that from happening, when he makes these falls, he'll be exhaling, and that allows him to get rid of all the air in his lungs so that when he hits the floor hard, he can still get up and continue to defend himself. On this next fall, on this next position, he's going to do a rear fall again, but he's going to go from a standing position. What he'll do here is go from this position to a squat, which is with the position we just finished, and then he'll roll on back and complete his rear fall. So, and then one more time, Daniel, just full speed. This is a rear fall. Fall. Just like that. Okay. All right. Our next fall is a right side fall. On a right side fall, just get on your right side. Let's say Daniel was taken down to the ground. If he doesn't know how to fall correctly, two ways he might try to stop that fall. One is with his hand. The most common way to prevent yourself from falling with people that don't know how to protect themselves from the fall is this right here. Now he's going to break his wrist, damage his elbow, injure his shoulder. It's going to be difficult to continue to defend yourself if you're hurt. So another way that would be incorrect is take the fall this way. Now he shatters his elbow. Here again, it's going to be difficult to defend himself. The correct way to fall would be let the large muscle group of his lat on that right side absorb all the energy, as well as displacing that energy out his forearm through his fingertips. We're still at a 45-degree angle from his body. His head is still tucked in, his chin is still tucked into his chest. Stopping this action from happening, boom, whiplash effect, as well as his head hitting possibly the concrete or the pavement. That's how we prevent it right there. Want to always have a support leg up on the opposite side So he's ready now to defend himself. It becomes a situation where he's got to protect himself from a kick. He's able to defend himself by having that leg up and protect his groin, as well as now he's ready to start scrambling and get him back on his feet if he chooses to fight on his feet and not go into a ground fighting situation. Okay, we start that fall from a sitting position. Same thing here again. Daniel, go ahead and cross your arms over your chest. I like to start in this position here, there again, so he's used to bringing the arms out and letting the arms slap the floor, which absorbs the energy. And fall. There's the position we finished in. Once again. Fall. Okay, now into a squatting position. Same thing we did on a rear fall. Now what Daniel will do to ensure that he falls on his right side is pick his right leg up, move it across in front of his left, which forces him to fall to his right. Fall. Correct falling position there, leg up, chin tucked into his chest, okay? And standing. From a standing position, what we'll do, here again, the reason we move from a sitting to a squatting to a standing position is to increase the amount of force that he has behind his fall. The fall's not going to be easy out there on the street. So this is our way of duplicating some of that force to get you used to taking that impact when you hit the ground. What he'll do here is move his right leg in front of his left, go down to the squat, and continue to fall to a right side fall. Fall. And there's correct position right there. Okay, left side fall. We're doing the same thing on the other side. This is where your finished position should be, with his head tucked in, so it doesn't bounce off the floor. Arms at 45 degrees, displacing energy, forearms to fingertips, falling on his left lat muscle, right leg's up, ready to get up or to protect himself, and this is the finished position right here. Okay, from a sitting position, left side fall, fall. Okay, from a squatting position. Now he'll move his left leg in front of his right leg and fall onto his left side. Fall. There's the finished position. And then from a standing position. Cross your arms, Daniel. Do it again, but cross your arms. Daniel's used to doing these things. He doesn't like to be basic like I want him to be all the time, but I like students to get used. Now, if you already know how to fall, then of course you can move like Daniel does with the arms hanging freely. But if you don't know, I like students to start with the chin tucked in, arms crossed at their chest, which then they know they got to swing those arms out to make contact with the floor and fall. And finish position on the left side fall. Okay, and now the hard one. Separate the men from the boys, so to speak. Next we'll do the front fall. The way most people would stop this type of fall, whether he was pushed from the back, tripped as he was running or something, would be to try to stop the fall in this push-up position here. What's going to happen is, as his body weight is going forward and all the momentum's going forward, his wrists aren't going to go anymore. That's the maximum range of motion right there. He's going to injure himself pretty significantly. So how do we prevent that? What we want to do is we want to let the forearms to fingertips. Now we've done that on 3 different falls already, right side, left side, and rear fall. We're going to use those same principles. We're going to have, Daniel's going to have his arms in about push-up position. This is too far out. This is too close in. About push-up position. The energy is going to be displaced from his elbows to his fingertips. He's going to turn his head to the side as he falls. What happens when he normally falls is his head goes forward. There may not be much clearance between his face and the pavement, so to give him some extra room, we turn his head sideways. Now he's got a little bit more space there so he doesn't hit his face on the floor. So what he's going to do is he'll turn his head to the side as he falls. He'll displace that energy here, and he'll exhale too, which we're doing on all these falls. You may not be able to hear him on the video, but he's exhaling on all these falls to get the air out of his lungs. And then go ahead, front fall. Catching himself now, there should be clearance like there is here between his chest and his stomach and his groin. All that stuff hitting the pavement real hard would hurt you and put you out of business for a little bit, and that's not good. We want that head up a little bit more, turn to the side. And you can see here the clearance we have here. Turn your face straight, Daniel. Now look at the difference. We've got about 2 inches of play there, turn it sideways. We increase that to about 4 inches there. So you're giving yourself a lot more room, so when the head bounces a little bit or tends to shift down, like it will do, you're still not hitting the pavement, and then that's important. The next position we're going to do from a standing fall is he's going to do it, or a front fall is from the standing position. He'll go to a kneeling position first, and then go to the front fall. Well, that does, as he goes to the kneeling position, that whipping action when he goes forward increases the velocity and the difficulty of the fall. Okay, hands are up and fall. And there we still have, he's falling on his forearms to fingertips, exhale, head turn to the side, complete clearance in through here. Okay. And probably the most difficult, not probably, the most difficult of the falls is going to be the front fall without going to your knees first. So he's going to fall from this kind of like the old iced tea commercial, but instead of falling backwards in the swimming pool, Daniel's falling forward onto the mat. So he'll start with his hands spread apart, head turned to the side. He won't kneel first, and he'll just fall. Fall. And here again, he's catching himself on his forearms, displacing all that energy, making sure his head doesn't bounce off the floor, and he's got complete clearance here to prevent his groin and chest and stomach and all these things from bouncing off the floor. Okay, good job. Okay, we're going to move into our takedown portion of the video right now, and we're going to look at several different takedowns. And it's important to remember when we're working these takedowns that we need the element of speed on these takedowns. It doesn't hurt to be strong, or at least strong enough to perfect the technique. But we're employing the principles of leverage and a lower center of gravity, which allows you to increase your strength level if the subject you're dealing with is bigger than you are or stronger than you are. The first technique we're going to do is a shoulder throw. Now, the best way to perfect these techniques would be to learn to throw from your left side, your right side, your strong side, your support side. Realistically, however, unless you have a lot of training time, it might be difficult for you to perfect both sides evenly. So I say concentrate on your strong side. You already have better coordination and probably better power already on your strong side than you do your support side. So let's maximize that ability already. It doesn't require any more training effort or time on your part. And certainly if you have the time, then perfect both sides equally so you become good at working these techniques from left or right. This first technique is a shoulder throw. Here again, we might find ourselves in a situation to make this type of throw. Later on in the video, we'll have officers suited up doing these same techniques to see what problems exist with their equipment, the shoulder mic or the handheld radio on the side, your weapon, so on and so forth, your vest limits your range of motion, so on and so forth. And we'll see how we can overcome those problems. But I'm going to go ahead and show the technique on the shoulder throw. There's a few principles that have to occur. I like to make the grab on the arm here on this shoulder throw. And once again, when I show these techniques, understand that I'm not using any momentum from the subject, which I would certainly like to have. If he was pushing me and trying to get rid of me, that type of motion right there is a bad mistake on his part. His motion now and momentum is going that way. If I step inside here to make the throw, he's going to go that way. And his momentum is helping me make the throw. On these throws that I show, or these takedowns that I show, because they won't all be throws, but on these takedowns, you have to understand that we would like to have some of the subject's motion or mobility moving against himself. And having said that, most of these takedowns I'll show from a sterile position. He won't be moving at all. I like to make a grab right here, somewhere around the wrist or the lower part of the forearm. I make a good distinct grab. In any type of grabs that I do, I never grab that way. All he's got to do now to get out of that grab, pull away from the thumb. Do it the other way, makes it a little bit harder for him to move, and by the time he makes that motion right there, he should already be on the ground. Now from that position there, I got to move in close. When I move in, I like to hook right here. I like, we call it a shoulder throw, but I actually rest his arm, his upper arm, almost in the same place as my arm. I got his bicep or his tricep and shoulder tie-in right there is right on my bicep and shoulder tie-in. So this part of my arm, this part of his arm, I'm making contact right there. I ensure that that's going to stay there by coming up and locking him in with my forearm here. I keep my body close to him. I move my feet in this position. I have one foot pretty much lined up even with his foot. I have the side that I'm throwing him on the outside of his foot. And I'll show you why that is in just a second. But that's the position. Notice here now how I've lowered my center of gravity. So I'm down low. My center of gravity is right here about the belly button, roughly about an inch, 2 inches below the belly button. I want to make sure that spot on me, or my belt line, is lower than his belt line. I've achieved that right now. And then from here, all I have to do is this kind of push-pull motion. I'm pushing here on his arm and his shoulder as I'm pulling down here, kind of like a crank system, and I'll use that leverage to throw him in that position right there. And then you notice Daniel Goodfall falling 45 degrees from his body, head off the floor, letting that lat muscle absorb a lot of the punishment, legs up. Good fall. Yeah. Keep in mind when I'm doing these techniques now, that technique was not full speed, so if I can talk through a technique like I'm doing and at the same time use 1/3 or 1/2 of my speed and power and still get Daniel on the ground, obviously there's no resistance here, but bottom line, still moving his muscle size and his weight onto the ground without applying 100% of my ability, then think how you're going to be able to do it on the street when you are using 100% of your ability, speed and power. He's going to go down real quick for you. Once again, I'm in here like that, full speed now, just make the throw. I like to hang on to him after I complete the throw, because obviously I'm not going to let go. He stands up, I've got to get him on the ground again. So from this position here, I could go into a wrist lock or an arm bar or some other type of technique. And Daniel here again has a good fall. There may become a time where you get in this position here, you go to make your shoulder throw, and about right here, you didn't move quick enough like you were supposed to. You got a little bit of resistance from a stronger subject. The fail-safe here now, what's going to allow me to affect this throw, even though now the momentum of the subject is going back instead of forward, is I'll drop to the knee on the side that I'm throwing, in this case the right side. You see what it's going to do now? It traps his ankle against my leg, and now I just make the throw. And in essence, I'm tripping him and affecting the throw that way. So that's a fail-safe technique for you right there. Good fall. What you might see in some of these throws now is I may throw Daniel on my strong side on one technique and use the support side on another technique. And if I was wearing my gun and I'm a right-handed shooter, that shoulder throw that I just showed would come from this side right here, keeping my weapon away from him. If I was going to do it and my weapon was employed on the inside, I'd just come in there and make solid contact with my gun to prevent him from taking my gun. And I'm not going to be there for a long enough time for him to steal my weapon. This next takedown is going to be a hip throw. Here again, as the shoulder throw, it's a classic judo or jiu-jitsu technique. It's really irrelevant, but it's a hip throw. I like to start this technique coming out. It's the same type of grab we just had on the other arm for the shoulder throw. I grab here again, thumbs on the inside, fingers on the outside, good tight grip. This is not good. This is a good grip here. I always grab somewhere. The reason I'm not grabbing the wrist now is I want a little bit more leverage, which I'm achieving by moving a little bit higher up on his arm. I'm not moving up too high because his arm gets bigger as it moves up, and it makes it more difficult for me to have a good solid grasp. So I stay about right there on the wrist and forearm area, right between both of them. I make a good grab there. I'm coming in here now. I hook his head, and I make the throw. And then Daniel there again has a good fall. He's falling on his right side now, lat muscle, forearms to fingertips, leg up, head off the floor. Always maintain a grip here on the subject. Don't let him go. Now you got to fight him again. Hang on to him while you got him, and then deal with it from here. Let's look at the footing on both those last two techniques, because it's a little tricky there on both the shoulder throw and the hip throw. If I move my foot in, this is what I'm doing. It's like a two-step move, but it's all occurring. In other words, once my body starts to move, it all moves. I don't move here, stop, and then move again, of course, because he's going to counter that. Once my feet start to move, and that would be for the positioning of the shoulder throw right there, and the foot positioning for the hip throw is almost identical. All that I'm doing differently is I'm grabbing here for the shoulder throw, right up underneath his armpit, if you will, right about the triceps of the shoulder, and for the hip throw, I'm taking him around the head and throwing him in that fashion right there. This next technique is an outside leg sweep. Now, an outside leg sweep I can attack, as in all these different techniques, I can attack either side. I can sweep both legs. In other words, if Daniel had a narrow stance, I could come in here and I might be able to sweep both legs. We're going to put him in a regular stance, a fighting stance. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to sweep this leg here. It's called an outside leg sweep. What I'm looking for here is for the back of my calf to come in at the back of his calf. And from that position there, it's a stiff-legged move, and I'll take that leg completely off the floor as I sweep him down onto his back in this particular technique. Now, it's important that you understand, when we talk about a sweep, that's why it's called a sweep, this is a sweeping motion. Okay? If you thought about it with a broom, you wouldn't sweep the floor and stop, you wouldn't get very far. You sweep, so we don't want to come in and stop, and then I push him down like a trip. Then it's a strength move. There's no advantage here by either one of us. It's who's ever the strongest. And we don't want to deal with that. We want to deal with who's ever the most technically proficient. I'm going to come in here and hit him real hard there and sweep that leg out from underneath him, taking him down to the ground. Prior to doing that, there's a couple things I have to do. First off, when I come in here to make the grab on him, I will grab now a little bit higher. I'm going to go right above the elbow. Same type of grip, thumb inside, fingers outside, a little bit higher. I'm going to grab him on the other side. I can grab him by his shirt and hold him. I can grab him underneath the armpit. It really doesn't matter. I can grab him by the head. The bottom line is I need some type of steering wheel to steer his weight onto this leg I'm going to sweep. So once I get all that weight onto that leg and I sweep him out, he's going to go down to the ground. Here again, I'm in this position here. I steer him onto that body weight. It's important that your chest is against the subject's chest. This won't work This space here won't allow this technique to work. You're losing your leverage there, and all of these takedowns are based on that sticky man philosophy we've spoken about before, where your body has to be close to the subject's body. That prevents any type of counter from occurring, and your strength is in here close, not far away. As we'll see, that'll be an important element of our weapon retention also. So I have him in this position here. I'm in here chest to chest like I should be. I put all his body weight on that leg that I want to sweep. My leg comes through here, contacting his leg, taking him down to the ground. Once again, same grip that I had when I did the technique. I hang on to that, and then from there I go into some type of arm bar, wrist lock, or some type of control technique to finish the job. I shift his body weight into here. I've got all this space now to bring my leg through. That's the motion right there. Coming through like that. I come through and take him down to the ground. I'm in a solid base here. I'm leaning over. That's where my momentum took me. I'm in this position right here as my finished position. Okay, this next technique we're going to work is called a body drop. And here again, don't get hung up on the terminology used of what I describe these techniques. Somewhere in some literature, they all have fancy names associated with them. We don't need any of that. I happen to call this next technique a body drop. What I do there, and here again I can work from either side. I come in here, I make the grab again. Now, I've used the same grab on at least 2 or 3 of the takedowns that we've seen so far. I come in here, I'm hooking the head. Right at this position right here, it looks very similar to our hip throw, but instead of moving and taking the subject down from this position, I'll move my feet all the way through. And now I've got him completely across my back, and I'll just use that fulcrum system to take him down on the ground. There again, and Daniel makes a good fall for himself. Now, here again on this technique, as well as all the others, you as the officer controls the amount of impact you want the subject to take. So if you want him to take a lot of impact, you just throw a little faster, a little harder. And don't hold on as much as when he makes that fall. You're going to maintain contact all the time, but you free up that resistance you have on his arm when you make the throw. If you don't want him to fall as hard, there again, all you have to do is pull up on one of those appendages that you have a hold of, and you can minimize the impact. And that's important not only for the road, but for your training partner. You run through training partners pretty quick if you're slamming them full speed all the time. And you can minimize the hurt on your partner just by controlling the descent that you place him down on the mat. And that's important so you can continue your training without hurting each other, certainly in the early stages of this training. Again, on that body drop, I'm making, and I'll show this one again. This is a little bit unorthodox technique. You don't see that much. I come in, I'm hooking the head similar to a hip throw, coming right on through and making that throw there. You see at the very end here, I pull up on Daniel's hand. He's my training partner, and although he can take the fall, I might need him here for another half hour, an hour. So I pull up on his arm, minimize that fall a little bit. If I don't want to do that, I release that. Don't let go of the hand, but I release that resistance, and he takes the full fall, whether it be on the street, the concrete, the floor, wherever it happens to be. Okay, we're going to be looking at a hip toss. This is probably one of the less sophisticated techniques that I'll show. It's a very simple technique, but very effective. Positioning, like anything else, is critical. I'll come in here, I'll make the grab. Now, you've seen this grab before. So far, we've been here, and we've been here. We're working the arm in a couple different places to set him up. I got him up here above the elbow. I step inside, I get him in this position here. Notice how I bring his elbow up high now. I'm a right-handed shooter. If I went for this technique on this side, I'm preventing him from getting my gun in this position. I got my arm wrapped around his head. If I sat all the way through now, I'm going to end up in that body drop that we just showed. And if I kind of went half the way and threw my hips into him, we're at that hip throw that we've already talked about. I'm going to do something completely different. From this position here, and I got him in here tight, there's no position for him to move in here. I just put my left leg, in this case, all the way through and sit down. That's the position I'm in right here. I still hold him nice and tight, sets him up nicely for an arm bar, or allows me to reverse this position and to a side mount and mount him, which we talked about in our other video. Okay, this is the hip toss technique. Here again, I'm in this position here. I make it real uncomfortable and tight for him. And although I may show these takedowns in a couple different steps, you know that once you start and commit yourself to the movement, you don't stop your movement until you've perfected until you finish the technique. So I'm here and I sit right through, taking him down to the ground right here. There again, there's a lot of pressure on the subject's ribs. I got the side of my body and chest, push it on him right here in his ribs with his arm extended this way, puts a lot of stress on the ribs where they tie into the cartilage there. My training partner, I'm going to take it easy on in class. If I'm out there on the street and it requires more force, I can apply more force with this takedown if I have to. A few of these next techniques that you're going to see that we had out in entry team combatives, but because a lot of people viewing this tape perhaps are not on a special response team, I think it's important that you see these techniques on this video. And this first one here is called a head vice with a high crotch. When I do the head vice with a high crotch, the critical point is the head vice. So I come up here and I have my arm in this V shape and I'm squeezing Daniel's head inside the V shape of my arm. Okay, that's the head vice. A C shape right here would be wrong. I don't come up here and get it here. The head's too loose inside my arm and I want to prevent the head from moving at all. I'm going to move the head for him, so I keep my arm in a V shape. So I come up here, make this tight. I like to grab right around the ear, and from that position there, I pull his body. Now, so that's the first part of the position, is this head vice. Look how off balance Daniel is. We know that the body goes where the head goes, and that's what's occurring here. I got his head pulling down. His body is extremely off balance. To finish the move, I come around, I get the high crotch, which is right here between his legs. And all this is the safety valve. This move here on the head is going to take him down to the ground. I'm going to make sure it happens by holding on to the high crotch. I got to take my left leg, this one right here, and move it out of the way. The reason I have to move my left leg is Daniel's going to fall right where I'm standing. So if I don't move my left leg, he falls on my leg. So I'm going to move my left leg and sweep him, or my momentum is going to sweep him down to the ground. So I come up here, head vice, torque the head, step inside, move him down to the ground. Now here again, you see me put my hand down here to cushion Daniel's fall. In real life, I don't have to do that. I can let his chest take all the force of my body against his chest, and depending on what my use of force level I'm at the time I'm doing this skill, this is the way I'm going to make the takedown. But certainly in training, I have to be careful because this is a high impact fall for the bad guy, and I like to control my descent so I don't kill Daniel. Head vice, high crotch, I get the head vice, sweep the high crotch, take him down to the ground. And here again, I don't like to get into the habit of bracing myself and hurting my own wrist. I've got a shock absorbent mat here, it allows me to do that. A lot of these tough techniques that we're working on, we can use our throwing dummy to do, and after I perfect this technique, I can go full speed and power on the throwing dummy. I don't have to worry about hurting the throwing dummy. Okay. This next move I call a twister takedown. What I'm going to do is I'm going to have my arm extended. Now it's really important that when I do this technique, I keep my arm extended. I'm not a physics major, but I know if I bend my arm when I do this technique, it doesn't work. And if I keep my arm straight all the way through the technique, it allows the technique to be workable. I come in here, I make the grab here. Here again, we've seen this grab. I'm either grabbing here at the base of the wrist and the forearm, or I'm grabbing right here, just slightly above the elbow. In fact, a couple fingers are probably on his elbow. I'm in here, real tight grip. This arm, which is going to be doing most of the work for me, is going to be coming up and slapping Daniel on the side of the neck, staying straight, as I maintain my squeeze here, and as I pull with this arm will be pushing, and I'll be spinning around, driving him down to the ground in that position. Thus it's called twister takedown. That's what I call it. Make the grab here, come in, step sharply here, take him down to the ground. That clothesline effect of the bicep against the side of his neck and the centrifugal force of the movement allows me to take him down to the ground. Good fall by Daniel, hanging on to what I got. Once I make the grab, I'm going to hang on until I decide what I'm going to move to, whether it be a wrist lock, arm bar, or some other control technique. Okay. Here again, I can't reiterate enough how important it is for you to be able to use the bad guy's momentum to assist you in these techniques. Now, we're doing all these techniques flat-footed, but Daniel's not providing any momentum shift towards me, which really helps me out, and we want to make sure that happens to us on the street. Sometimes it's going to be tough to perform a technique without using the subject's body weight against himself. In fact, that's how all these things were initially designed, was using the subject's body weight against himself to make you a more stronger officer out there on the street. An example is certainly on this twister takedown, as Daniel comes in with that momentum. Now I hardly have to make just a quarter of a step there on my twist, which when he was standing flat-footed, I have to come around almost half, sometimes even further, to do the same technique. So his momentum there of wanting to go that direction just helps me out taking him that direction. Okay, this next move I've coined the bulldog takedown. It's probably one of the only techniques, I have one or two in this program, two I think for sure in this program, that require a little bit more strength than some of the others. Now they all require speed, strength, stamina, skill, surprise. Those are always your 5 elements of good defensive tactics, techniques. And this one here and another one I have later on require a little bit more strength than the normal technique. This is called the bulldog takedown. When I come up, I candy cane hook, what I call a candy cane hook, the back of his head. So a candy cane shape like that. My forearm is flush against his face, and I got my arm hooked behind his neck. Now we know that the body goes where the head goes, so I want to snap him down in this position. Couple things here. If I come in here and I hook the back of Daniel's head in this position, that's wrong. My arm's away from his face, that's incorrect. I don't have any strength. I lose my strength as my arm gets pushed away from my body. I have strength in this position here. I bring this head in close to my forearm. I bend my arm, which makes my arm more powerful. And to make it even better, I put all my weight on my arm, keeping my arm straight and bending him down in that position there. Now as I'm doing that, my arm and hands coming back here, grabbing him around the belt. If he didn't have a sufficient belt, maybe he's in a bathing suit or something I can't grab, I can go for that high crotch move again, which same thing we did a head vice high crotch. And what I do from that position there is I push his head down and drive his body forward, right to this position right here. I still got my forearm at the back of his neck. I still got my hand right here, and certainly you can see that I'm ready to move into a mount position on his back, which another video. But in any event, that's the bulldog takedown there. Once again, if his momentum's coming forward, it makes my job a whole lot easier as I take him down to the ground. Now Daniel's doing a good job here, making his front fall, head turned to the side. I hear him exhaling, and he's got his forearms absorbing as much as that impact as he can with me flat on his back. Notice that when I've got him in this bulldog position here, this is the arm here, this would be wrong now, this is correct. Got my body down, I got his pants, I'm at about 90 degrees from his body. Okay, I can't stay here. I'm going to take him in that direction, so I'm 90 degrees from his body. As I push down on his head, my body has to go down with him. I don't do this. Look at my arm extending. Now raise up, Daniel. There's no strength there. I keep my body down. It's difficult now for him to raise up, and as I drive and push him down, I go down to the ground and maintain that contact all the way to the ground. Okay, these next three takedowns that we're going to look at in this series are coming from what's called the underhook. Here again, I've showed some of these techniques in entry team combatives, but if you're not on a special response team, you probably don't own that video, and so they're very good techniques, and I like to share them with you here in this officer survival tape. They all start from what's called the underhook. When you grab somebody, he grabs me, I grab him, it doesn't matter. In this position here, this bear hug position, I'm in 2 underhooks, okay? If I grabbed him in this position, I have an underhook and an overhook. And if I grabbed him in this position, I have him in 2 overhooks. And he also has me now. I got him in 2 overhooks, he's got me in 2 underhooks. What's important about that is when you grab somebody, you probably didn't know you had any technique there, and then it's just a strength contest to see who's going to break free or get the first guy on the ground. I want to show you some good techniques here from the underhook. So if I'm coming here grappling with Daniel, I'm going to make sure I sink at least 1 underhook. And for me, being a right-handed shooter, I usually try to sink my left hand, my support hand, as the underhook. So all these moves are moving my gun away from him, so it makes it harder for him to take my weapon. The first one is an underhook to a T-bar. Underhook to a T-bar takedown. Now in this position here, I got the underhook, that's my arm right here. I catapult that arm up in this fashion. Understand this would be incorrect. Throwing his arm up, the surface space here, good chance I come in here and I miss. Now I'm not in underhook at all. I'm in his problem. He's going to choke me. So I don't do that. I make sure I grab the underhook. Now my whole arm has his arm. I catapult that over my head. A safety valve is for me what I catapulted to lower my body and get underneath that arm. I move to this position here, tied against his body. That means my head's here. Look at my back being straight. I have him lower center of gravity than he is. From this position, all I do now, the positioning of those hands around his waist are like that. That's preventing him from going anywhere because he wants the T-bar. I'm going to give it to him. This arm comes right between his legs, boom, real hard. Re-grip in the front. I've got the groin now trapped between my wrist and my hand. What I do there is I just rotate my shoulder up as I push forward and take it down to the ground. I keep my hands in position all the way through the takedown. Once he's prone down this position, I release my hands, go into some type of control technique. What's going to protect my hands from getting hurt is his chest and his stomach and his hips all hitting the floor first, because my hands are tucked up inside of his groin and pulled up deep. So all that other muscle and fat that he has there hits the floor before my hands do. So that protects me, allows me to keep my hands in place. If I'm in this position here, notice now too, I'm about 90 degrees from his body. I'm not standing behind him. I'm 90 degrees from his body. If I go to lift and apply that pressure on the groin, and it doesn't look like he's going to go down quick enough, I'll take this left foot here in this case and do a front trip. From this position here, I'll pull that leg out from underneath him as I drive him forward and take him down to the ground. This is a T-bar takedown from the underhook. From this position, stabilize, grab, get him all the way down to the ground. This next technique now is also working from the underhook. We're going to do what's called underhook to a spin takedown. The spin takedown that we're going to do, as well as the outside leg sweep that we already demonstrated, probably have the biggest impact. That doesn't necessarily mean you're going to cause the most injury to the subject, because some of those sleeper type takedowns that didn't look as violent or as fast put a lot of stress there, like I showed on that hip toss on the rib cage area. But these next two takedowns, but these two takedowns, the spin takedown and the outside leg sweep, probably put the most hurt, if you will, on your training partner. They're pretty aggressive takedowns, and one of them's coming up right now, the underhook to a spin takedown. What I'm going to do here is I'm into this underhook position again. Notice my back is always straight. I'm never leaning in this position here like a high school or college wrestler. We're not wrestling, we're defending ourselves. I'm in this position here. I catapult that arm up. I go to this position here, same setup position that I was in for the T-bar. Now what I'm going to do, Daniel, hold me up here so you can just show my footing. I'm going to be in this position. I'm going to trap his feet just like that. I'm going to trap both of his feet with my feet. Now he's holding me up so I can show you this. And then from this position, I do what's called a hip heist. I throw my hips into him. At the same time I do that, I spin and take him down to the ground. That's why it's called a spin takedown, and it all started from the underhook. So it's a spin takedown from the underhook position. Okay, once again, underhook position. Catapult the underhook, duck under, stop him here, trap him here, slip him down to the ground. Two things, I keep my hands locked all the time. What protects me? His chest, his stomach, his hips, his knees are all hitting the ground. My arms are protected under here. I keep my body down close to him. I maintain the grip all the way through the takedown. Once he's proned out in this position, now I can move to a position of control with my ground fighting techniques.
Just a reminder on these techniques, when you're doing the falls, the most important falls, or one of the most important ones, are the ones you don't practice. When you're doing a front fall technique, which a lot of these end up in a front fall, make sure you turn your head, you breathe out, taking the impact with your forearm, disseminating that energy, because it's an easy way to get hurt. Psychologically, we don't like to practice those falls, but it's ones that are important, as you can see from these techniques. They might look easy, but they take a lot of practice, and we want you to make sure you cover all your falls prior to doing these techniques.
Okay, underhook to a spin takedown, catapult the arm up, make it a stop, take it all the way down to the ground. Here again, you hear that little bit of oomph from Daniel going down on the ground. It's a pretty violent takedown for the subject, and he comes into a front fall. He knows how to protect himself a little bit. Here again, I can't mention enough how to try to, I want you to train full speed all the time, so you're training realistically, but you have to minimize some of this stuff. You have to minimize a little bit of the oomph factor that you're providing, because you want to have a training partner for next week and the week after, and so on and so forth. Still working from the underhook now. We've already had two techniques from the underhook. We had underhook to a T-bar takedown, underhook to a spin takedown. This is underhook to an armbar takedown. It starts the same way. I'm in this underhook position. I got my arm hooked underneath here, right on top of his shoulder. I support my underhook with the other arm. I come over here and say, this is wrong. My arm's extended. Anytime your arm gets extended from your body, you lose a lot of your strength. So I'm in here tight. My arms are bent. I pull down on this arm in this position. I got that arm straightened out in an arm bar. I just take him on down to the ground, maintaining good footing, keeping my hands in place, working on that arm bar right there. Allows me to go ahead now and move on that arm bar to a chicken wing position for a position of control and cuffing. From the underhook, I'm going to support my underhook, snapping down, putting motion on that arm bar, and driving down to the ground. Got to remember now, if I'm pulling him forward, I can't stay back there. I've got to go forward with him. I should end up in this 90-degree position when I'm finished on this technique with a good strong base. Hands still in position. Okay, these guys are working a hip throw here, working back and forth. Are we ready, John? Good sit through, good fall by Daniel. Come on, guys, up again. They can go through these repetitions. We might go 10 minutes on a technique, 8 minutes on a technique. John, let him sit through now. After he goes, roll him on around, Daniel. Here we go again, back up. John, it's your turn. Don't fall prematurely. Let the guy take you down to the ground. Sit through, John, all the way through. Good fall by Daniel. Here we go again. John, don't do anything. Let him take you to the ground. Sit through, Daniel. Boom, there we go. Good fall by John. Here we go again. Get ready. And right there. Instead of pushing down, take him this way. Take him sideways this way.
Okay.
Okay, don't bend your knee when he does that, Aaron. Stay upright. Don't stay upright. And let him come through this way and sweep you.
He's bending his knee maybe.
Yeah, he's bending his knee.
So here?
Yeah, now you're gonna sweep him right there.
All right.
All the way through. Boom, that's a good one. Good sweep. It's important. Aaron, bring that arm to the sun. 45 degrees. You extend it. It's gonna hurt your shoulder. I like these guys to work with different body sizes. That's why we like to throw John. John's 210 pounds, 215, big guy. As well as throwing guys that are short and stocky and wiry guys. We like to work with as many different partners as we can because body sizes out there on the road are going to be different for you. Got Aaron and John working a hip throw technique, working back and forth. Good, good fall, Aaron. Keep your balance, John. That's all right. Keep your feet spread out. One more time. Keep your feet. There's a good one right there. Hold on to that arm. Good, good. You might see we like to work different body styles, and there really is no secret to who it's better to work with, although I will say that it's often more advantageous for a shorter officer to be throwing a taller subject because your center of gravity is already lower in most instances than a taller subject, where if you're a tall officer throwing a shorter subject, your center of gravity, you have to really compensate for that and get down low up underneath this guy to make some of these throws effective. We've got a smaller guy throwing the taller guy here on this hip throw. Makes it a lot easier for Daniel. His center of gravity is already a little bit lower than the tall subject, and he doesn't have to bend down so much. Having said that, don't ever think that that's the case. Always lower your center of gravity, and in doing so, keep your back straight so you got good strength with you. A lot of our takedowns that we like to work on the throwing dummy. Here again, I'm a real advocate of working full speed, full power. Having said that, as you already heard me mention, you got to kind of control the descent of your training partner. Even though this is a shock absorbent mat, it's still pretty hard impact that they're taking if we go full speed and power, which we're capable of doing once we reach that level of training where you need to be. Until then, we can always throw the throwing dummy. This one's made out of solid, or made out of leather. It's real solid. It can be punched, kicked, thrown to the ground, and isn't worried too much about the impact. I can work outside leg sweep here. I get all that weight on that leg, coming through, sweeping that leg all the way to the ground, taking him down to the ground. Want to hold onto his arm, get used to my muscle memory, doing the right things every time that I work on the dummy. The dummy can be worked to mount, to strike with the dummy. We can work shoulder throws on the dummy, come in here, that same arm position I had before, lower my center of gravity, make the throw, try to hang on to the dummy. This dummy is about 75 pounds of dead weight. We equate that to about a 180-pound man. We're going to look at the weapon retention now. We're going to do weapon retention a couple different methods. We're going to work weapon retention from the front with a gun in its holster. We're going to work weapon retention from the rear, gun in its holster. Then we'll have our handgun out with the subject have his hands on the gun trying to do a gun takeaway. And then we'll work a long gun retention. A couple things I want to say about handgun retention is we've forgotten too much about what the priority is in retention, in weapon retention, and it's very simple. It's retaining your weapon. And I say that because in a lot of schools are teaching, a lot of instructors are showing to trap the gun down with one hand, use your support hand to deliver some type of radial nerve strike or hit the guy in the nose with an open palm strike. And what's going to happen there, since you only have one hand on your gun and the bad guy has two, is you're going to lose your firearm. We're not going to do that. We're going to keep both hands on the gun at all times until we break this guy's hand free of our weapon or we break this guy's hand. He has the choice. Here's what I'm talking about on some of these things. Also, too, there's a couple places out there still that don't have weapon retention holsters. Guys, we're in the 21st century of law enforcement. You need to have a weapon retention holster. All retention holsters can be defeated. None of them are fail-safe, but they certainly give you a little bit of an edge and a little bit of help in trying to retain your gun. When it's not a retention holster, you're going to lose it just that much quicker. Here again, one of the schools of thought, bad guy reaches across, grabs my weapon. You got guys that are trapping the hand here onto the gun, delivering some type of radial arm, radial nerve strike here to try to get this guy to free the grip here. Or we come in here with a heel palm strike, we're striking the guy here. I've got one hand trying to keep my gun in its holster. The only reason he's got one hand on the gun is he's just waiting, buying time to get the second hand on the gun. While I'm trying to be defensive on this guy and he's pulling on my gun, I'm going to lose my weapon. I've got one hand, that's not going to work. Another school of thought, we come in here, we got guys that are pinching the holster closed, down below the holster, trying to help the holster retain the weapon. Here again, it's not sufficient. He's going to be pulling on that gun. I'm trying to deliver some type of offense, and I'm going to lose my gun. And now my gun's taken away, and I'm going to be shot with it. All these retention techniques are based on three principles. They're based on leverage, joint manipulation, and violence of action. If you have those three attributes, leverage, joint manipulation, and violence of action, we can get this guy's hand off of a gun, and that's what we're going to do. The first technique I'll show is from the front. And by the way, when I like to work these drills, which we won't do on this video, the way I'd work these drills if we were in a regular conducting a training program, is I have officers the bad guy puts his hand on the gun for reference, and we start out trapping the gun down, which I'll show in just a second. And I always get students to kind of move in slow motion, and that's not realistic when this guy's trying to get your gun. So to up the training intensity, to make you move fast, because fast muscles will save your life, quick reflexes save lives, is I have the officer unsnap his gun, put his hands on top of his head, let the bad guy get his hand as close to the gun without physically taking it, and then when I say go, the officer's got to keep that gun in his holster before he can pull the gun out. Then it gets you to move a little bit quicker, and you're not allowed to cheat as much as you might want to do in a regular training environment. Okay, the first technique we're going to work is working from the front. Understand that when a subject grabs your gun, he's only taking it for one reason. He's taking it to shoot you with it. Very seldom will a guy come with one hand only. He'll grab. The initial grab will be one hand, but eventually the other hand's coming. So we want to try to make our move when we can when the subject makes that first grab. So we're only fighting against one hand. We got two hands in our body fighting against one instead of two. Although these techniques will work whether he's grabbed with two hands or one hand. The first technique we're going to work is the subject's grabbing here with his left arm. All these principles, wait just a second, Daniel, all these principles are going to allow me to start the same way. And that's good because that means the muscle memory is the same, whether he's grabbing from the side, the front, the back, one hand, this hand, doesn't matter. It's all going to start this way. Strong hand goes down on my pistol. This strong hand, fingertips pointing forward, is pushing my gun into its holster. He's trying to push it out, I'm trying to push it back in. Support hand is in a 90-degree position. Same thing. Both hands now are pushing the gun into my holster. Let me tell you that certainly if I saw this guy reach for my gun, the first thing I want to do is get his hands away from my gun. That's a perfect world, and the world's not perfect. So what we're going to do is train worst case scenario. We're going to say we screwed up, whatever happened, but we made a mistake and we allowed this guy to get too close, and now he has his hand on our gun. What are we going to do? And those are the techniques that we're going to work on. Here again, some other rules of thought is that when a guy grabs your gun, I immediately start to step away. That's not a good thing to do. Here's why. Daniel's about 170 pounds. I'm 175 pounds. If I pull back and Daniel pulls back, we got 170 pounds and 175 pounds both pulling against the gun. He's pulling that way, I'm pulling this way by stepping back. The gun's going to come out. I don't do that. I make sure that when he grabs the gun, I step in. What that does, if nothing else, what that achieves for me is it takes 175 pounds of pull off the gun. That's 175 pounds of my weight that I'm releasing now, so it doesn't help pull my gun out of its holster. Here again, the hand positioning. Strong hand here, support hand here. And that's the position I am. I lower my center of gravity. You see what I did right there? Watch Daniel's shoulders. As soon as I lower my center of gravity, Daniel's shoulders lower, takes him off balance. Anytime I get that spine other than perfectly erect, I'm taking him off balance, and that's going to help me by lowering my center of gravity. I'm trapping his hands down in here. I make the grab. Now I'm going to step inside. Look at the position I have of his wrist. The wrist doesn't go that way much more. He's almost at his maximum range of motion right now. So obviously, if I continue to turn in this small, tight circle, one or two things are going to happen. His hand's going to come off my gun, or I'm going to break his wrist. Okay? At the very least, when I do this, and maybe his hand doesn't come off, look at the position of his body and tell me how much strength he has in this position as opposed to in this position. So just by my body motion alone, I put him in a very difficult position to maximize his strength to pull that gun out of its holster. Now it's very difficult for him. Here I make it real easy for him. Okay? Once again, the movement for this now is going to be trap the gun down, lower my center of gravity, step inside, and I'll never stop. I'll continue to turn. I always tell people to think 360 degrees. Obviously, if I trap my gun down, turn, I'm not going to turn all the way around and be right in front of him again where he can grab my gun a second time. But in my mind, I'm visualizing a 360-degree violent turn. It's got to be a small circle. Here's the best example, the best analogy I can give you. If you took a 4-year-old child and you held him by the hand and you just went around in a circle like this, that child could probably stay with you around that big, slow circle. But if you took that same child and you spun quickly in a small, tight circle, they're not going to be able to stay with you. So we want this small, tight circle. If I do take a big step and I don't do what I'm supposed to do, he's going to stay with me, and I'm continuing to fight against him when I don't have to. If I make it a short step, small circle, I'm going to break that grip free every time. Here we go again. He reaches across, hand positioning, trap it down. Hand positioning, trap it down, lower my center of gravity. His wrist now straight. I don't want it to maintain that way. I step inside, freeze the weight from off my gun, freeze my weight off my gun, bends his wrist. His wrist doesn't want to go that position much more. As I continue this small, tight turn, he's either going to come off my gun or I'm going to break his wrist. Your body is stronger than this guy's wrist is. Once again, hands are there, trap down, turn. And I'm doing a tight, small circle turn, working against the wrist. Leverage, joint manipulation, violence of action. That's what we're doing here. Now we got the subject grabbing from the other direction now. Here again, it really doesn't matter. We know that when he grabs with this hand's coming too. We know when he grabs with this hand's coming too. So it doesn't matter. We're going to affect these techniques either way. We're working against the wrist. Trap it down. This is the most important part of all these techniques. If I don't retain my weapon, which is here, I can forget any type of offensive technique. I've got to retain my weapon first, and we're going to do that always with 2 hands on our gun. By the way, this is incorrect, because a lot of guys do this. Incorrect. How many hands are on my gun? Only 1. It's wrong. 2 hands always on my gun, pushing the gun back into its holster. From this position, trap it down, lower my center of gravity. Now I'm stepping inside with the left leg, and I'll make what I call positive contact. Forearm to his forearm. And as I step inside, I'll apply that forearm all the way into a position, try to get him to break the grip. Okay? I'll use that to break the grip. Leverage is what I'm using. Couple things here. If I get him bent over in this position, let's say this is all I can do. I can't do anything other than this. I'm in pretty good shape here, because how strong is he to pull my gun out of his holster in this bent over position with this arm extended compared to here? Remember about self-defense is all about buying time. I'm going to buy a whole lot more time when he's in this position than I am when I'm up here playing tug of war. So if nothing else, just by getting him in this bent over position, if that's all I achieve, I'm going to hang on to my gun a whole lot longer than any other position that I'm working. Okay, once again. He's coming across now with this arm, trapping it down. Hand position is the same every time. Muscle memory. Every time he grabs my gun, I'm right to here. Every time I grab my gun, I'm right to here. Same thing occurs every time. Trap it down, lower my center of gravity. Forearm in the back of his forearm. I increase the strength in this position by laying over the top of my arm. This is wrong. This upright position here. Now look at him coming up. I want to stop that from happening by leaning over onto my arm. It makes it hard now. So as I step through and drive, I can get him all the way down to the ground, still holding onto his hand as it peels off my gun, ready to go into some other type of ground combative technique. Here again, important thing is when in conducting a training class, I like to have the students, that same drill we did with the gun was unsnapped, hands above their head, bad guy with hand close to there, getting you to move quick. I like to do from the back too. If you didn't lose your gun in the training program from the front, you shouldn't lose your gun from the back. It makes no difference, but here again, for some reason, because we don't have the human reference in front of us, we have a tendency to be confused about what we want to do. And we're going to do the same thing we did before. We'll start, he's on this side here. The first thing I do is I lower my center of gravity, make the grab. It's the same thing we did before. It's the same thing we did for the front. I'm moving to my weapon. I don't necessarily need to look. I know where my gun is. I make that move quickly and lower my center of gravity. As I turn in, I'm going to do the same thing. I step in, takes the weight pull off my gun, and look at his wrist already. It's starting to bend. That wrist is not going to go in that position much more as I continue that small, tight, violent circle. The hand's going to come off or the wrist is going to break. If his wrist breaks and he still has a grasp of your gun, he's not going to be very effective then at pulling it out, because now again we've damaged the structure. He's going to have a hard time pulling it out with a broken wrist. Once again, trap the gun, lower my center of gravity, step inside, get that wrist bending. And although I'm stopping here, I'm only stopping to show you how the wrist bends. In real life, once I start my motion continues till I achieve whatever my goal is. In this case, it's continue to move till I get his hand off my gun. And I'll get it off either through the centrifugal force, the leverage and joint manipulation, the violence of action, or I'll get it by breaking his wrist, and then he won't have enough strength to pull my gun out. And I'll buy more time that way. Now he comes across with the other side, makes the grab. He makes the grab here. Hand positioning is the same. Understand that anytime we talk about hand position the same, feet do the same thing, all that means is your muscle memory gets reinforced over and over again. Every time you do the same thing, over and over, it's muscle memory. So that in the street, when something happens, you immediately respond with that subconscious thought or that non-conscious thought where you're just responding through your muscles, doing it so many times that they're working for you free of charge. So here we go. We trap it down. Now I'm going to rotate my arm out and hook behind his arm. It's almost the same thing we did from the front. We're using forearm to the back of the forearm now. Same thing. I apply that pressure all the way down. If this is all I could achieve right here, how much time can I buy here to save my life compared to here? I'm not going to buy a lot of time here. Strength against strength. I get him bent over, I maximize my strength and take away his strength. And then I'll just keep driving and spinning as I break that arm free. Again, using leverage, violence of action. Once again, he makes that grip, trap it down, hook the arm, step around, and break that grip all the way through. Notice how I always try to hang on to a guy once I grab him. I don't want to have to fight him again. Well, I've already got him, I might as well maximize it while I have him here. Now, obviously, I don't have eyes in the back of my head, so when the guy grabs my gun, what am I doing? Am I turning right? Am I turning left? Here's what we're going to do. We know that about 90% of the public is right-handed. So I hate to play games and play gambles, but we're going to have to play this gamble this time. I'm going to gamble that the guy grabs, not a good gamble today because Daniel's left-handed, but I'm going to gamble that the guy's right-handed. So the first move I would make would be a right-handed move, because most of the public, 90% of the public is right-handed. That means when he comes up behind me, he's going to go with his strong side, which is right hand. I'm in this position here. If I got into that position and I went and I noticed that I have no torque working on him there, I'm going to hook that arm and violently turn the other way and use the second technique to break him from my gun. The one thing that we can't do is take a hand off the gun. I can't ever get into this. Reaching around, grabbing, now he's going to take my gun. Two hands will defeat one hand every time on your gun. Always keep two hands on your gun. Understand what they're doing for you. You're pushing the gun back in its holster. There should be three hands stacked in a row. His hand, my hand, my hand. And that's the way it should be in every position. His hand, my hand, my hand. And if I do that every time, I know that I've got the positioning here that allows me to make an effective weapon retention move. I know what you're thinking. I'm not going to let this guy grab my firearm. I'm sure the 13% of the officers that were killed with their own guns said the same thing. We're just playing worst case scenario here. You've had a bad day. Things have not gone well for you. He has your gun. How do we get him off your gun? Obviously, if I can prevent him from ever getting my gun through some type of parry technique, striking technique, good body positioning, all those things I want to employ before it gets this bad, I'm going to use those first. But when those don't work and he's got his hand on your gun, we've got to use effective, realistic techniques. we have schools of thought out here, and because an academy or a reputable institution is providing you some of this information, please don't always ensure that it's correct or the best thing for your survival. Unfortunately, it's not always the best thing. We've got schools of thought out there also teaching that when the guy makes the grab, I trap my gun down and I sit down. And all that's going to do is not only now am I 175 pounds, but anytime you move my body 175 pounds and increase the velocity, in this case sitting down, you increase the force. So what am I doing? I'm increasing the force pull against my own gun as I sit down along with Daniel's weight pulling my gun. And you're going to lose your weapon that way. The other thing I don't like about this sitting down when a guy grabs your gun, immediately moving into a sit-down position, is first off, although I only weigh 175 pounds, when I start to move that body weight and increase the velocity of my movement, or any movement whatsoever, I increase the force. In other words, I actually weigh a little bit, I weigh more than 175. So I don't have 175 pounds pulling on my gun. I've got whatever that equation increases my force to. In addition to Daniel's weight still pulling on the gun, you're going to lose your weapon. Secondly, let's say about halfway through the sit-through, bad day, he does get the gun. Now you're going to be in a sitting position in front of this guy a foot away with his gun pointing at you point blank. I'd much rather be standing up, so worst case scenario, I lose my gun, I can still run away. It's harder for him to shoot a moving target than it is to shoot somebody at point blank. And then in addition to that, let's say I sit down and do retain my gun. I sit all the way down, I retain my gun. Now he's in a position of advantage in ground combatives for police, you know that. And if it's only moments away from here now, he's going to effect a collar choke on me with his free arm. And then once he chokes me into a position of unconscious, then he is going to pull my gun and shoot me. Stay on your feet. We might have a possibility, not only we have to worry about gun retention with the weapon in its holster, but we have to worry about retaining the gun once we take the gun out. If I have a one-handed grip on this gun, and there could be several different scenarios where this could happen, where I've got one hand on my gun and this guy makes a grab for my gun. Certainly, and I've mentioned this before, as he's reaching for the gun, I want to pull that gun away into a weapon retention position, which is back here, parry this, and then escalate to whatever use of force I need to do to stop him from doing that again. Let me just tell you that a weapon retention position with this gun back is this. This is not correct. If it escalates to a shooting situation, now I got to do that. I don't want to have to do that. I want to just be able to pull the trigger from here if I have to. This is not a weapon retention position. Now I shoot the police officer standing over here, or the citizen, or the crowd that's gathered. This is weapon retention position. Pulling it back to my side, still pointing at the subject. So if it escalates from here, I can take it to that next level if I have to. But let's say I had one hand on the gun, bad day, he makes the grab. Here's what I'm going to do. First off, the worst place for me to have leverage is on the butt of the pistol. So I already have one free hand. I'm not going to come in here and grab it here, because we know that's not a good place to grab. I'm going to take this hand like a spear hand, right over the top through here, right over the top, and re-grip my gun, have that muzzle point right at his face as I step in and pull that gun away. And then naturally either do what I'm always going to do, either totally fully engage or disengage. And because we're talking about weapon retention, I'm going to disengage and make sure he's not going to get my gun again, because I know he's now a very violent subject who wants to take my gun to shoot me. Once again, when I do this spear hand technique, I come in here is to make the grab. I lower my center of gravity. The reason I step inside is a couple things. Psychologically, he expects me to step away. I'm not going to do that. So mentally, it gives me an advantage there as I step in. Secondly, anytime I move my body in closer, I'm strong. You don't do curls like this. You do curls in close. So same thing. We're stronger in close. Once I make that grip in close, now I bring my body in tight as I catapult all this stuff right up through to retain my gun. Let's say now that I have a two-hand grip on my gun. Scenario's different. He makes the grab. Certainly if I could have parried it, kicked him, done something to keep him from getting this far, I would have done that. That didn't work. We're in this position. Same thing. Get in close. Bring my body in tight. Lower my center of gravity. Bring that gun right up through his face. Your arms are like a rocking chair. You got this rocking chair motion. So when he grabs, I step in and rocking chair motion. And that psychological effect of that muzzle coming right across his face, look what his head does when the muzzle comes up. When he moves his body in that position, I'm taking away some of his strength. That makes me stronger, and I can come in there and effectively take that gun back away. Now we're going to look at long gun retention. Here again, your shotgun, or in this case, AR-15, a carbine, whatever you might have, we have to retain these weapons too. Couple things here. First off, in the gripping of these weapons, I get a lot of guys all the time want to hold these guns here, like you see on TV, up close to the magazine well. I don't like that for a couple reasons. First off, I have less leverage on the gun here than I do here. And leverage is part of the way we retain our weapon. Don't forget that, so I'm going to need that. Secondly, the correct way, if I had a illuminating device, if I had a flashlight on this weapon, the illumination switch is here. So it's a natural place for me to have that anyway. And thirdly, if I have my gun here and he grabs my gun and we start struggling for it, I accidentally depress the magazine release, the magazine's going to come out. Now I get my gun back and it escalates to a shooting situation. I've got one bullet in the chamber and that's all that I have. The rest of them are laying on the floor somewhere. So hold your gun up here. That's what the stock was designed to do up there. The 4 stock will hold that gun from right there. When I'm in here in this position and he gets my gun, now here again, obviously your best case scenario would be don't let him get in this position, but that's not always realistic. So we've made a mistake. He's already got us in this position. The first thing I'm going to do is I want to maximize and increase my strength level. How do I do that? Lower my center of gravity. Step inside on the weapon. If I can do it right, I might be able to shove that gun towards his body, which when that muzzle's touching his skin, might shift his thought process from taking my gun to I don't want to get shot here, and that's going to, anytime we're shifting his thought process from taking our gun away, it's giving us the advantage. But even if that doesn't work, I lower my center of gravity, I move my body in. This makes me stronger now compared to being out here. I'm real strong. Now all I have to do is rotate this gun to the outside of his forearm and then use that gun as a leverage tool to come right around and free the gun free. Once again, he makes the grab. I lower my center of gravity, step inside, hook the gun around, take the gun back. That's what I'm doing right there. Okay? I can go to the other side. I can do the same thing. I can lower my center of gravity, step inside, hook from this side. You see that front sight there? That's one thing I like about the AR-15s. They got that big front sights in there. I let that thing torque into his wrist as I pull it on around and take that gun back. Same thing again. Step inside, lower my center of gravity, hook his arm, take my gun back. And that's what I'm doing right there. So I want to do one more from the other side again. He's got my gun, I make myself stronger. Lower my center of gravity, move inside. I'm strong when my arms are bent compared to my arms being extended. And from that position there, rotate that gun to the outside. Look at his wrist already starting to bend. That's going to take away all the strength and rotate that gun all around. Take your gun back. Now, there's a counter to every technique ever invented. The good news is there aren't many counters to this technique that I'm showing, because here again in mainstream hand-to-hand combat and martial arts and your different fighting systems, most of the time we're dealing unarmed, hand-to-hand, or maybe knife to unarmed, and so on and so forth. So there haven't been a lot of counters to these techniques. One thing that he might try to do is free up one hand for a re-grab. When he does that, I want you to know that when that hand comes off the gun, he's made that mistake. It makes life a whole lot easier for you, because now you only have to defeat one hand holding your gun instead of 2 hands holding your gun. Same principle I talked about when we were talking about weapon retention with a pistol in your holster. You need 2 hands on your gun all the time. Here's a classic case where he takes one hand off the gun that he's trying to steal. He's going to get defeated that much quicker. I like the chain cuffs. I like the chain cuffs only. I don't like your hinge cuffs. I don't like any type of cuff that restricts the pliability and the movement of the 2 cuff systems. And the only one that doesn't do that is the chain cuff. Everything else you can't do that with. That's not a good cuff to be using. Couple principles with the handcuffing that we're going to employ. First off, when we grab handcuffs, we need to understand that we grab them firmly. I always put the cuff in the webbing of my hand and make the grab, keeping the entire oval open, free, because that's where the guy's wrist has to go. You see people all the time holding the cuffs like this, or holding the cuffs like this. I don't know how you're going to get his wrist in there when the first thing you have to do is move your finger. So your cuffs need to be firmly in there in the webbing of your hand. That's how we're doing. We're always going to cuff with the single bar down. And the reason we're doing, you got single bar, double bar. The reason we're cuffing single bar down is so if we don't get that cuff going all the way around, gravity's going to help us and keep it suspended right there where I can take a free hand and feed that thing right back up there like I need to. If I don't do that, which some of the systems teach single bar up, and I don't make it all the way up, now that gravity's defeating and hurting us, and now that's a real hard motion to come all the way around to refeed that single bar back through the double bar. So I want single bar down all the time. Gravity's going to be important for us on 3 of our 4 cuffing techniques. It's not going to matter in prone what the single bar is doing in gravity. So the reason we want single bar going down all the time is muscle memory. If I do it in wall vehicle, kneeling, or standing. I want to do this. The cuff's doing the same thing in prone. All the cuffing techniques we're going to do are called cross-cuff techniques. Here again, schools of thought have you wearing your cuffs on your support side, bringing your handcuffs out with your support hand. But here we take our handgun out, strong hand, our chemical spray, strong hand, impact weapon, strong hand. Why do we take this tool and bring it out support hand? Doesn't make any sense to me. I take them out, strong hand. I wear my cuffs in a position that allows me to reach across and remove them with my strong hand. If my wearing of equipment and all the stuff I have on my belt wouldn't allow me to do that, then I would do the next best thing. Take them out support hand and move them to strong hand before I start cuffing. Please keep your cuffs in your pouch until you're ready to handcuff. And that's important because what you see a lot of times, but just for the sake of the point I'm trying to make here, I don't have him in a good position, and as I move up now, I've already got my cuffs out. So when the fight starts, the only way I can fight is with one hand. And we know that in order to get control on another person, you need a minimum of 2 hands to work for you, and you've got your cuffs out. Don't take your cuffs out till you're ready to cuff. You're not ready to cuff till you have the guy at a position of disadvantage and control. All your cuffing techniques, whether they're the ones in this video or some other incorrect techniques that you might see, are based on the subject being in complete compliance. If he's not compliant, it's going to be difficult to cuff him, and you're not in a cuffing situation then anyway if he's non-compliant. You're in a control situation. So we're going to, for the sake of this video, we're going to have the subject always in a position of control. All these techniques will allow me to grab his thumbs in what I call a buddy shake. I'm grabbing his thumbs. Every time I go to cuff him, I'll have that same thumb grab there. What that allows me to do is have a good solid grip on his hand. It allows me to extend his arm out and open up the wrist, and allows me to put an oval handcuff, handcuffs are oval, not round, on an oval wrist. Most wrists are oval, not round. And I always want an oval cuffing an oval. I don't want to go oval to oval this way at right angles. I want to go straight on just like this. Okay, maximize your cuff, because on somebody broad across the shoulders or somebody heavy, you're going to run out of length real soon on your cuffs. You're going to need every little inch that you have to make the cuffing successful for you. The way I'm going to show you 3 different prone techniques. The first one is my favorite. Cross your ankles, and hands out to the side, palms up like you are. I have the guy look to the left. That's so he can't see what I'm doing. The first thing he has to do now to be a non-complier is uncross his ankles. When I see his ankles uncrossed, again, right there I know he's getting ready to be a non-complier, and now I change. I'm no longer in a cuff situation anymore. I have to regain control. And my cuffs are still in your pouch. I haven't taken them out. So go ahead and cross your ankles, left hand behind your back. As long as he's complying with what I say, I have a complying subject. And you know as well as I do, there's a fine line between a complier and a non-complier. I come in here, I pick up his hand. I get his hand in a wrist lock. I got both thumbs behind his wrist here. If at now he decides he doesn't want that left hand behind his back, I can change his mind by applying pressure on the wrist lock, by pushing down, also applies pressure on the elbow and on the shoulder. What I do from here is I stay on the balls of my feet, and I keep this hand in my stomach or up in my chest, depending on how tall he is, and use it kind of like a stick shift. I hold it right here. I reach across. Notice how I still have his hand here. I don't want to give up anything till I have something else. I reach across and grab his thumb. There's that buddy shake. Now I'm free to take my cuffs out. They should have not come out before now. Single bar down. Always my hand between his arm and back. Single bar down towards the shoes. Regrip the cuff and the webbing in my hand. Thumb shake. Step out of the way, extend his arm, single bar down. If I do that technique correctly, with single bar down, inside toward the shoes like I just did, I'll always end up with his knuckles to knuckles, the cuffs on correctly. And that's the hardest position now for him to move the cuffs behind his butt up to the front. He can still do it, but it creates a whole lot of commotion as opposed to having one knuckle this way and a palm facing the other way. Make sure on all these cuffing techniques when we do that, when I have Daniel finally cuffed up, I'm going to always use the double lock. And it's got your slide double lock here, and most of them are, so a lot of them have your double lock, your small hole here, or on the bottom. And I'm always going to double lock my handcuffs. That prevents the cuffs from tightening up on the subject when he sits in the back of the police car. And now if he wasn't complaining about the cuffs being on too tight, he's going to be complaining about it now. So be careful with your liability situation there, and make sure you double lock those cuffs. Make sure also when you're double locking those handcuffs, it's not only preventing you encountering a liability problem with the cuffs being on too tight, but it also helps prevent this guy from trying to break the cuffs and get out of the cuffs. We know that if you put them in the back seat, they have that free seat belt floating around back there. They can take that single edge of the seat belt and stick it between the double bar and pry it open, and now they have one handcuff free. So buckle up all your seat belts back there that happen to be floating around to help prevent that, and always handcuff a subject behind his back. I don't like any subjects being cuffed in front unless it's for a medical purpose. Other than that, everybody, federal arrestees, county arrestees, and municipal state arrestees should be cuffed in back. Once again, we're dealing with a complying subject. The first thing Daniel has to do to be resistant, uncross his ankles, hands come from around his back. Now I can either totally engage or disengage or change my level of force options because he's becoming a non-compliant subject at that point. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come up and I'm going to pick up his feet. Notice when I pick up his feet, I'm not standing over him. Now he becomes non-compliant, kicks me in the face. What I do is I bring my head back, I bring his feet up, and I straddle his feet in this position right here. Okay? From this position now, and this is my position of control, his legs locked here and me grabbing the thumb. I got his buddy shake. Classic cross cuff technique from here. Now my cuffs come out. They don't come out before that. It's a fatal mistake. Take your cuffs out too soon. Single bar down, oval to oval. Regrip the cuff and the webbing in my hand. Single bar down. Thumb shake. Oval to oval. He's done. When I push off of him, I push his feet away from my face and back away. So if he becomes non-compliant once the cuffs come off, there again he can't kick me in the face. I don't like that technique as much as I do the first one because I've seen guys that are in that position with their legs bent and you straddle on top of them strong enough to extend their legs and push you off of them. That's not good. And then we're not in a cuff position, we're in a control position, but guys are capable of doing that. That first technique allows you a little bit more control, in my opinion. Okay, third technique. Hands behind your back, legs crossed like they are. Third technique of prone cuffing, I'm going to come in here again from the side. I'm going to thumb shake, both of them right here. Push him up to his back and straddle the guy. The control now is provided in that first method with the stick shift that you had. In the second method, you're straddling the guy's legs bent behind you. In this method, I can just keep pushing. You see Daniel grimace a little bit. As I push, I'm driving his arms up into these chicken wings position, and it provides me a good position of control. Now I'll back off a little bit because Daniel's my training partner here. Thumb shake. From here on, it's a classic cross cuff, which means if I'm a right-hander, which I am, I take the cuffs out of my right hand, cuff his left hand. If I was a left-hander, the cuffs would come out now in my left hand and cuff his right hand. That's why it's called cross cuffing. Thumb out, I always pull a thumb, pull his arm away from his body, single bar down, cuff down towards his shoes. Regrip the cuff, single bar down, pull his arm out, cuff down towards his shoes. Step off of him and always move off to the side. Don't make the mistake of pushing off and coming back here, and now he wakes you up as you move back and you get kicked in the groin. That's the third method of prone cuffing. We're always going to double lock these cuffs every time we're working this stuff in the real world. I like these training cuffs because they help you. You get a lot more repetition in using a pair of training cuffs that don't have to be locked and unlocked all the time, and you get a lot more repetition, a lot more work, a lot more muscle memory than sitting here and still being on the first technique because we have to work that key and take them off that way. Okay, in a kneeling position, there's a couple things I can do here. I don't like the person to be down in what I call a low kneeling position. I don't like that. Some people like that. They feel it provides them more control. I feel it's more places he can hide things. I think he has a lower center of gravity like that. He's kind of like a weeble. He's going to be hard to mess with. So I like to keep him upright in a standard kneeling position. What I do when I come in here, here again I'm a right-hander. I put my left foot on this gas pedal here. Now the first thing he has to do to get up is get this foot off because this foot is trapping this leg down. So the first thing you have to do is get rid of my foot and then uncross his ankles. Allows me to disengage or jump on top of him and totally engage, which are always my options, engage or disengage. So I have him in this position here. Here again, a mistake now would be to take my cuffs out. I'm not ready to take the cuffs out yet. I grab the thumb shake. We've done it the same way now every time. Now my cuffs come out. Pull his arm away from his body, single bar down, cuff down towards his shoes. Regrip the cuff and the webbing in my hand, single bar down towards your shoes. And he's finished in that position right there. And that's your kneeling cuffing. Cross cuff method. So far we've cuffed the same way in every position. That's important. That's working on muscle memory. You don't want to have one method of cuffing for prone, another method for kneeling, another method for wall vehicle. We know that if you have several methods to do one skill, the first thing your brain will do in a critical incident is decide which method to use. When you want your brain working on the same method every time. Go ahead, hands out to the side, palms up. Left hand behind your back. Now, I can either come up now and make positive contact with my leg and grab that left thumb, or I can have him have that right hand behind his back and come up and do the same thing. Notice I haven't taken my cuffs out. What this positive contact allows me to do here is I can come across and foot sweep him, I can foot hook him, I can do T-bars, I can do a lot of stuff with him. I want him to know that I'm here, I've got positive contact. I grab the thumb from that position there. Turn this way. We haven't talked about positions of disadvantage yet, so just be patient with me because I wouldn't have him in this position. I'm going to get him sprawled out. I'm going to show you how to get somebody sprawled out like they're supposed to be. But I grab that thumb here. Now my cuffs come out. Single bar down, pull the arm out, open that, expose that wrist, regrip the cuff and the webbing in my hand, single bar down, grab the thumb, in towards my shoes, and there I go, okay? In your cuffing positions, your most secure position, from most secure to least secure, prone is the most secure position you could have a subject in. Next is kneeling. Third is the wall vehicle position, which we'll do here in just a second. And the least position of secure is this standing position. But you see officers all the time use this position, and I'll show you here in a second how to get him to where you at least have some advantage. And that's the key, is to have advantage so he has none. Because I'm showing the cuffing technique, I'm going to have Daniel in what I call the modified wall vehicle position. Modified wall. This is for training purposes only when the training that I'm doing or the skill I'm trying to perfect is my cuffing. I'm going to show you in a second where he's really supposed to be before I move in to do this technique. And that's completely off the wall, spread eagle, so that any more motion backward from him would probably cause him to fall or create a whole lot of discomfort for his shoulders. This is not a good position to be cuffing in, but we're working the cuff technique, not the position of disadvantage, which we'll talk about in just a second. When I have him in a position of disadvantage, which he isn't, but we're assuming he was, then I'm ready to move in. I make positive contact here. I always like to cuff and then search. I like to cuff and search, although we do at times on the street frisk first, then we end up cuffing and searching, and I'll show you that in just a second. But we're working the cuff technique. Let me just back up just a second. Go ahead, Daniel, left hand behind your back. Now I'm going to move in. I let him keep his right hand up there where I can see it. I get positive contact here, very similar to what we did in the standing position. Grab the thumb. Now I'm ready to take my cuffs out. Take my cuffs out, single bar down, pull his arm away from his body, go down towards his shoes. Regrip the cuff, single bar down, put your head on the wall, give me your right hand. I intercept that hand as it comes around, hold on to the thumb, cuff down, and I'm in this position here. Walk towards the wall, and I get him in that position. I'm ready now to go ahead and escort him back to my police car. Physically, maybe he's a large person and physically he can't put his head and rest his weight on his head while I cuff the other arm. And what I can do there to make the adjustment, left hand on your back, I can move in here, make positive contact, I got control, cuff comes out, we'll do it just a little bit differently this time, single bar down towards the shoes, regrip the cuff. Now what I tell the guy to do now is take a step forward as you give me your right hand. Okay, and I notice as I move forward, as he moves forward, I move forward to maintain positive contact and intercept that thumb and get him in that position there. I prefer to have the guy rest his head on the wall or the vehicle while I cuff the free hand. That cuffing motion takes about a second to do, and he should be able to maintain his balance for that length of time. But if he can't, then I'll do this modified wall vehicle cuff technique that I just showed you there. Spread your feet back, spread your feet back, spread your feet back, spread your feet back. Somewhere in here with giving him these instructions, he's probably going to make some type of comment to me about this, I'm uncomfortable, or this isn't good, or whatever it happens to be, or grunt or groan. Then I know he's starting to put a lot of stress on his body, and I know now that he's at a position of disadvantage. All that I'm doing here is coming verbally from a safe distance, which is out of his striking range, like where I'm standing now. If at any time he doesn't comply with me, I change my level of force, and I either totally engage or disengage, which is always my two options. Now he's in a good position. Now I would move in, make positive contact right here, leg to his leg right here. I could foot sweep him if something happened in this position. I could foot hook him if something happened. I could T-bar him if something happened. All those different offensive moves I could make if he started to change his mind now and became a non-complier. The first thing he would have to do to fight from this position is regain his balance. When he does that, I can disengage or engage. Once again, get in a good position of disadvantage. When he's in that position now, spread your feet back this way a little bit more. Now I move in, make positive contact, left hand behind your back. Now I would be ready now to move into my cuffing. He's at a good position of disadvantage right here. Okay. Getting a modified wall vehicle position again, Daniel. Here again, just for instructional purposes only, take a little bit of stress off him. What I like to do in these positions here is I like to divide the body. Here again, searching, it seems to be a lost art in police work. I divide the body straight down the spine. There's half to the left, half to the right. Divide the body again at the waistband. That gives me 4 distinct areas to search. I got area number 1, front and back. Area number 2, front and back. Area number 3, front and back. And area number 4, front and back. If I stick with those areas, then I can pretty much be sure that I'm not going to miss anything if I stick with those areas. I don't want to miss something. I don't want to be going up and down because I forgot something while I was there. So I'm going to do a methodical search, or if it's a frisk, I'm going to divide the body that way. You also see officers not knowing which leg to put forward, what arm to search with, being off balance when they search. We're going to prevent all that. We can do a technique called left, 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 right, right, right. And simply what that means is if I'm searching his left side, I'll use my left hand with my left leg forward. That allows me to do this right here. And then if I'm going to search lower extremity, I lower my body, keeping an eye on what's going on so I'm on balance. I don't lean forward where he has the advantage now, grab my head and throw me. When I'm ready to move to the right side, I do a little push against his back and switch sides. What the push does is it takes his thought process from me frisking him or searching him here to why did he just push me on the back? When he finally figures that out, I'm on the right side. So it's just a little distraction. Go to do the other side, push in a little bit, I re-grip. Now my right hand is searching his right side. There's your water. Now my right hand is searching his right side with my right leg forward. Left, 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 right, right, right. That way if you have any confusion whatsoever, this is a good method for you to cuff. To keep from avoid reaching through here and grabbing and trying to do stuff like that. Once he hooks my elbow like he just did, all he has to do is roll me, and now I'm on my back. He's in a good armbar position. I'm in trouble. How do I prevent that? I don't reach and extend my body over here. I do not reach and extend my body. If I have to search here, I'll stay on the outside of his arm, which makes it more difficult for him to grab me. Okay. I commit my head too far past the subject in that wall vehicle position. Now he just grabs my head and he's into a hip toss or a hip throw, one of the techniques that we showed also in this video, so we want to prevent that. When he's in a standing position, a good standing position, spread your legs, spread your legs, spread your legs. Hands out to the side, palms facing me, left hand on your back. If I was going to cuff, I could move in now like we just talked about. Positive contact here, grab the thumb, go for my cuffs and do cuffing. If I want to frisk first, I'll have you spread eagle again, hands behind your head, interlace your fingers. If I want to frisk first, I'll come up, make a grab here, pull him off balance this way. At the same time I make positive contact, and I can do a frisk. Understand what a frisk is for now. We're not searching for contraband. We're frisking simply for weapons. I can frisk for that knife or gun or whatever it might be from this position here, and keeping myself on balance and him off balance. Okay. Kneeling. Go ahead, kneeling position. Right leg over your left. In our kneeling position, we already know that to cuff, I would want him in this position here, step on, grab the thumb, go to my cuff. But let's say I want to frisk first, because there again, a lot of times we want to frisk this guy for weapons prior to cuffing him. Hands behind your head, interlace your fingers. I do the same thing that we just did. I'll come up here, I can gas pedal him, pull him off balance, and do the same thing as I frisk for weapons. I'll switch feet here, and although I've lost the gas pedal, I'm still at a good position. Still at a good position, and he's off balance here as I frisk for weapons. And then from that position, I'll go into a cuff position. Okay, another method that would be an accepted method of cuffing from this position here, as I come in here, we start the same way, but I leave his hands in this position here. Now I take my cuffs out, single bar down, same side, I get that cuff put on, I re-grip the cuff, single bar down, both hands behind your back, both hands behind your back. As he comes in, I grab the thumb, and I cuff him here. Now I can do that, and it's an accepted method of cuffing. I don't suggest you do that because we're talking about muscle memory on all these skills, and if I do the other 3 techniques with a cross-cuff method, and I choose to use that kneeling method of cuffing, I'm hurting myself now because I'm deviating from the game plan, which hurts my muscle memory, and it also, in a time of crisis, I'm going to be thinking, am I cross-cuffing or am I doing same-side cuff? So I don't like that, but I do want to show you that it is an accepted method, one of the few that's out there that I think is still a good method that's not cross-cuffing, but the reason it's not as good is because we're not cuffing that way in all the other positions. We're cross-cuffing. Okay, two things we really have to be concerned about here in our handcuffing or any type of temporary restraint devices we use, whether they're plastic cuffs or steel cuffs, or positional asphyxiation and hand palsy. Positional asphyxiation is caused by, a lot of times, by hog tying or by taking a person and putting in them such a compressed, compact position, either during the handcuffing technique or after you have them handcuffed and placed in the back of your police car, that they're incapable of breathing correctly. And we can cause positional asphyxiation, which in short means the subject's going to suffocate. So we have to be careful of that. And the best way to do that is don't hog tie. That's not accepted practice anymore. And anytime you have somebody, especially somebody that might be overweight or under the influence of narcotics, keep an eye on them when you get them in any type of compressed position when you're attempting to do your cuffing. 4 or 5 guys on top of a subject perhaps could also cause positional asphyxiation. Secondly, hand palsy is usually caused by putting your cuffs on, whether they're steel cuffs or temporary devices, on very tight and leaving them on for an extended period of time. And what it does is it cuts and destroys the nerve endings, and that numbness in that guy's hands that occurs when you take the cuffs off, the numbness never goes away, ever. And he has a condition known as hand palsy, and he can lose the use of his hand or arm, depending on what area is affected, permanently. And there again, for liability purposes, one way to prevent that is when you're using steel cuffs, double lock them, put them on correctly and double lock them, stop them from tightening up on the subject. Secondly, when you're using your temporary restraining devices or your steel cuffs, make sure you keep an eye on the guy's fingers if he's going to be cuffed for an extended period of time, to make sure any swelling or complaints of numbness or redness attracts your attention, that you need to take some action so you don't have this guy fall victim to hand palsy. I hope this video has been helpful for you. We've taken a lot of different subjects and put them together and shown you a couple different options here in your weapon retention, your handcuffing techniques, as well as your takedowns to the ground. Remember, everything requires a lot of practice. If you don't have that time to invest in that practice, understand that you're kind of whittling away on your survival attributes to be able to protect yourself out there on the street. It doesn't require to spend every day of your life in the gym, but that's okay too if that's what you choose to do. It might require just something as simple as review the techniques, think about them in your brain from time to time, and you're mentally preparing yourself that if something happens, you're ready to respond. All of your survival techniques have to be automatic reflex actions. The way we get that way is through constant training. Whether you're doing it visually or you're actually employing the techniques in a physical setting, it needs to be constant. So you're doing it automatically, where your thought process is on survival, not on how do I cuff, which way does a single bar go, how do my hands go on my gun, how do I take this guy to the ground. Those things should already be established in your brain and in the gym before you ever work on the street. You often see patrol officers out there suited up and maybe the radio's sticking out here, or they rest their arm on it and it's sticking out here. You rest your arm on your gun and it's out here. You're really doing yourself a disservice, because the equipment's not designed to work that way or to function that way. Plus, now you've increased your body size from the position it is here. Now you moved your gun out another 3 inches by resting your arm on it, or your radio. Now you're a little bit wider. And when you go to affect some of these techniques, they might work if you left your gear alone, and if you distort it that way, they may not work for you. So keep that in mind when you're trying to find a position of relaxation to rest your arm somewhere. Make sure that anytime you're practicing your weapon retention drills, whether it's with your pistol or with your long gun, that you do a weapons check to ensure that whoever's involved in the training has an empty gun. That weapon should be checked by both the owner of the weapon as well as the person conducting the training. Ensure that the chamber and the magazine well are empty. I also suggest you put an empty magazine in the empty weapon when you train your handgun weapon retention drills. That prevents somebody from inadvertently getting a finger stuck up in the magazine well and having that finger broken off or broken in doing these handgun retention drills inside the holster. So an empty mag in your empty gun. Train safe.
Policymakers seem to be more concerned with department liability than their own officers' survivability. We believe you don't need to sacrifice one to have the other. Learning the proper tactics helps keep lawmen within the boundaries of proper use of force. Officers can apply force in relationship to the resistance supplied by the subject without overreacting. It creates a winning situation for everyone involved. Self-defense requires speed, strength, stamina, surprise, and skill. The only element that doesn't diminish with age is skill. Ultimate Officer Survival will show you how to develop the defensive skills that are paramount to your survival. Train hard, fight easy. There is no acceptable alternative.